She's a wonderful woman. I think she's a powerful force of good and positive energy.
But she ain't no Elon.
But she also brought us Dr. Oz and The Secret. We have to remember what this lady has done.
She has to be held accountable.
I forgive her, but I mean, cut the The Secret is a particularly egregious offense.
What, you don't believe?
You don't believe? Oh, believe?
I want to be rich. I am rich.
I imagine myself flying. I can fly. I will beat my wings until I take off.
When you hear the name Oprah, chances are your mind jumps to wisdom, warmth, and maybe a shower of free cars. But brace yourself because that familiar image is about to get bulldozed. Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly are on a no-holds-barred truth. Spray, and they're not pulling any punches. Rogan's lobbing raw opinions like kettlebells in a CrossFit meltdown, while Megyn's slicing through mainstream media fluff with the precision of a newsroom scalpel. And Oprah, she looks like someone just interrupted her mid-book club monologue with a hard dose of reality. What could they possibly have said to rattle daytime TV royalty? This fiery showdown feels more unfiltered than an Oprah couch meltdown, minus the breaks and 10 times the bite.
I used to love Oprah, like most of us who grew up when we did. And only now did I realize I've been getting spoon-fed propaganda from this woman for years. I always took her little setup packages as gospel. You know, before I was a reporter, I never even thought to question whether Oprah might be intentionally misleading me. Then last night, the dawn came and I was like, oh my God, she is not a reporter, she's a propaganda.
Picture this. You're perched atop a glittering peak made of kale smoothies, jade eggs, and a battalion of spiritual gurus, all promising clarity, yet somehow leaving you more bewildered than ever. Welcome to the surreal summit of Oprah Winfrey's self-help empire, where gut feelings often outrank cold, hard facts, and a vision board quote is the go-to cure for life's messiest problems. But Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly didn't just raise an eyebrow, they launched a verbal airstrike. With zero patience for pseudoscience and polished platitudes, they reduced this glossy wellness kingdom to smoldering rubble, one sharp critique at a time.
Rogan is calling out Oprah and Michelle Obama for hypocritical speeches at the DNC. Watch.
She's up there talking about income inequality. Like, hey, lady.
Yeah, I know.
You're rich as Like, how is that equal? And also, when Michelle Obama was saying, you know, I think she was saying her mother or grandmother was always suspicious of people who took more than they needed.
Yes.
Like, you are worth so much money.
Take more than they need. The Obamas have 4 mansions.
I mean, it's a bunch of rich people talking about...
Rogan didn't just walk into the conversation, he stormed in wielding a steel chair labeled logic, while Megyn Kelly lit up the scene with a flamethrower called accountability. The result? Like tossing a TED Talk into a wood chipper. Messy, loud, and impossible to ignore. And where did they start? The glittering shrine of self-help, the cult of Oprah. For decades, she's been America's emotional GPS, but this one doesn't use satellites. It just yells, "Believe in yourself," before careening into oncoming traffic. And we cheered. We highlighted the books, quoted the mantras, and sipped the designer wellness Kool-Aid infused with moon water, scented candles, and a heavy dose of pseudoscience.
Yeah.
It was one of the more I want to say disturbing, but it was confusing when that was taking hold with people. When I had friends that were telling me that The Secret is real and that they imagined they were going to fulfill these childhood dreams that they had about whatever, being a fucking astronaut, whatever it would be. There's a couple people that I knew that were trying to tell me that The Secret was going to be the thing and that they had a vision board and they had photographs, they put pictures up of the things that they wanted. Like them in front of large crowds and shit. I'm like, oh boy.
Them in front of large crowds.
This is so not how it works.
Enter Joe Rogan, America's cage-fighting Socrates with a mic. He took one sweeping glance at Oprah's sparkling empire and asked the question no one dared to whisper. Are we really not going to mention that this is just a high-functioning con wrapped in glitter and good intentions? That was the spark. Then came Megyn Kelly, diving in like a prosecutor at closing arguments. Heels off, earrings metaphorically flying, like she'd been holding back years of side-eye reserved just for this moment of reckoning with goop-level nonsense masquerading as wisdom.
The Oprah interview,
No.
She's off the rails.
Yeah,
Off the rails.
I heard about it.
Into fucking wine mom country again.
Wow.
I'm a gun owner. Tim Walz is a gun. I did not know that. If somebody breaks in my house, they're getting shot.
Yes, I hear that.
Tim Dillon is the best. Tim Dillon's like, she's saying gypsy curses. What is she saying?
When was the last time Oprah actually spent time hanging out with a working class person in America? She's on her Montecito estate with one of the most beautiful mansions known to man. And that is why she did not follow up with Kamala Harris in response to that stupid gun question with, well, you're on camera saying that you favor mandatory gun buybacks. So how would that work? The Oprah enthusiasm worked when it was.
And oh, the nonsense. Let's unpack it. Remember Dr. Oz? Oprah's personal Frankenstein, plucked from obscurity, polished like a quartz crystal, and broadcast to millions. He started as her medical darling, then somehow morphed into a political candidate, as if a sentient Whole Foods aisle decided it was time to govern. Rogan raised one eyebrow so high it entered the stratosphere. "This guy," he practically shouted. The same guy pushing raspberry ketones like they were vibranium-laced elixirs from Wakanda? Then there's Dr. Phil, the Southern fried self-help sheriff with a degree in whatever Oprah needed him to be. A motivational menace dressed in therapy-light buzzwords, handed daytime dominance by the queen herself. Megyn Kelly didn't hold back. She grabbed the rhetorical mic and essentially said, "You created a couchside guru whose greatest contribution to mental health was yelling at rebellious teens in front of a live studio audience." Oprah, unfazed, just kept nodding like, "Yes, healing." Rogan and Kelly didn't need volume to make their point. They simply peeled away the glossy layers, the endless affirmations, the curated calm, and exposed the pulsing machine underneath. A relentless engine of branding, manipulation, and live your truth mantras that conveniently lead you to check out with a $39 bottle of eucalyptus oil and a dream. And then there's the crown jewel, Oprah's Book Club, a literary kingdom shaped by a woman who once recommended The Secret, a book that earnestly insists the universe is your personal Amazon Prime account, as long as you manifest with enough passion. Rogan was practically twitching. Wait, you're telling me this got airtime? Someone told cancer patients to just vibe higher, and you gave that a national platform?
So let's think of when The Secret came out. I want to say that was like 2006-ish.
2004.
2006.
Nice.
Okay. So 12 years ago, she was 50 years old. How the fuck did you not know when you're 50 years old and worth $1 billion that that's not how it works?
That it's hocus pocus.
Yeah, it's not hocus pocus.
Yeah.
And to sell that to people is crazy. And that's a book that sold, I think I was reading, it sold somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 million copies.
Wow.
Is that what it says, yeah?
Jeez.
That's...
Megyn Kelly didn't just raise an eyebrow, she raised the entire bar for calling out media delusion. Here's a woman, she pointed out, who once sold Think Your Way Out of Poverty to struggling Americans who needed policy, not positivity, platitudes wrapped in a hardcover. And yet, somehow, Oprah managed to reinvent herself as the nation's moral compass, as if she's the serene, candlelit conscience of America. Let's not forget, this is the same woman who helped create a daytime empire of tear-streaked drama, shout-fests, and feel-good fakery. Now she's aiming for brunch hour Dalai Lama status? Joe Rogan, eyes wide with disbelief, basically asked the unaskable, did everyone forget this is the same woman who once aired I Married My Horse-level content in the 90s? And then came the pièce de résistance, Oprah's evolution, into a political influencer. Because nothing screams relatable quite like a billionaire strolling through her private vineyard, casually telling viewers which candidate speaks to her soul. Rogan nearly combusted. Feels right? You picked a senator like you'd choose throw pillows? Meanwhile, Megyn, arms crossed, voice sharp as a scalpel, cut through the fantasy. Oprah has more wealth than the GDP of several countries, yet still markets herself as spiritually in tune with economic hardship. The only inflation she's faced? The markup on her signature chai-scented candles. Yes, they exist, and just when it seems they've said it all, Rogan leans in with the real bombshell. Oprah doesn't rise above media bias, she mastered it. Her entire empire, emotional propaganda in soft lighting, wrapped in cashmere and lavender.
Messaging down my throat of whatever she believes, not what's real. So, you remember she did that, like, kind of factual interview after the, quote, documentary of Michael Jackson?
Yes.
That was so dishonest.
Yes.
She did not raise any of those accusers' serious compromising facts when she had them right there. Maybe they're telling the truth, maybe they're not. But as a journalist, you have to at least ask. You know, you've got multiple lawsuits against his estate, sir. Might that be an incentive to lie?
Megyn Kelly was nodding so hard, it looked like her head might launch into orbit. This wasn't just bias. This was the bias, a soft-lit, audience-clapping, sniffle-on-cue moral theater, meticulously curated by a woman who turned weeping into a billion-dollar brand. Oprah didn't just create emotional content, she industrialized it. She's the Spielberg of sob stories, and every tier has a lighting crew, and don't even get Rogan started on Oprah's spiritual all-stars. There's Eckhart Tolle mumbling about presence, like a man who wandered into the wrong meditation class and never left. Then Deepak Chopra spinning mystical word salads so vague they could double as your horoscope and your Wi-Fi password. Rogan nearly fell out of his chair. "This," he stammered, "this is what we're calling enlightenment now?" Megyn, practically glowing with holy rage, lit into the contradiction. Oprah has spent decades packaging inner peace like it's a lavender bath bomb, soothing, fragrant, and utterly ineffective against real-world injustice. No policy critiques, no systemic awareness, just endless affirmations and positivity platters served on gold-rimmed plates. And let's not pretend her influence stops at the TV screen. She's in your headphones, your streaming queue, your charitable guilt. Oprah didn't just build a brand, she franchised mystic capitalism. Every time someone lights a candle and journals about gratitude while ignoring the eviction notice on their door, Oprah gets another addition built onto her vineyard estate. Rogan kept blinking, stunned. She made a fortune telling people to follow their gut, even when their gut was clearly full of it. At some point, it's not intuition, it's just gas and denial.
You've got these accusations against you. You had a book that you were supposed to produce about Michael Jackson in the context of litigation where you were required to turn this stuff over, and you lied saying that you didn't have it. And you only got found out because Random House and these other publishers admitted you shopped it to them and turned over the metadata to Michael Jackson's estate. My point is simply, this one accuser was very compromised, and she had him right after the documentary. It aired on HBO right after. Didn't ask a question. Then she gets Meghan Markle. That was another propaganda.
And then came the weight loss saga. Oh, brace yourself. Megyn Kelly nearly shattered the national sarcasm meter. Wait, she scoffed. The same woman who spent decades preaching body positivity is now hawking weight loss drugs like they're the next celebrity skincare launch? Did Oprah discover self-love? Or just a better sponsorship deal? Rogan couldn't contain himself. He laughed so hard it sounded like a motorcycle trying to start in a snowstorm. So the message was, you're perfect just as you are. Until the check clears, and the audience, at least metaphorically, lost it. Because deep down, everyone knows. For all the polished, wisdom-soaked branding, Oprah's empire is built on contradictions big enough to have their own zip code. She's hailed as the queen of authenticity, yet not a single moment of her public life has been unscripted since 1986. She's the advocate for truth, who once gave airtime to guests claiming they cured cancer with kale smoothies. She's positioned as the nation's moral compass, but somehow always lands on the side of history that's also the side of maximum profit. Rogan and Kelly didn't invent these criticisms. They just dared to say them out loud. No sugarcoating, no nervous giggles. Just a chainsaw through the rose petals, because for years, Oprah has floated above criticism like a wisdom fairy with a private jet. Question her? You're labeled a cynic. Dissect her carefully curated brand. Suddenly, you're not in alignment. But Rogan and Kelly, they didn't align. They dismantled. They spotlighted the glossy contradictions, ripped through the illusion of untouchable virtue, and left the empire of motivational grift smoldering in the spotlight, stripped of its incense and halo lighting.
Is coming from the other way. She had the accusers there, and the accusers may or may not have had this experience with Michael Jackson.
Oh, you're talking about the HBO doc?
Yes.
Yes.
But she failed to bring up prior inconsistencies in their stories that really did compromise their stories. I don't know what happened.
I understand what you're saying.
So
Okay,
I'm just saying, as a journalist, which she purports to be,
right.
it was a complete fail.
Right.
And then she committed the same failure with Meghan Markle,
Yes.
where she didn't press any of her claims of racism in the royal family. And now we have the ultimate culmination of her journalistic failure.
Megyn Kelly didn't just deliver a mic drop, she dropped a chandelier. At some point, she said, "You're not a media mogul. You're just a billionaire lifestyle blogger with cult status." The kind of line that doesn't echo, it detonates. And Rogan, he didn't miss a beat. She sold wellness the way McDonald's sells salads. Looks healthy, but check the label and it's still deep-fried nonsense. And that was the takedown. No viral sound bites, no dramatic standoffs, just two people standing in the emotional, ruins of an empire that once glittered so brightly, it made criticism feel like blasphemy. How did we let this go on for so long? They asked, not with contempt, but with disbelief. Because once you peel back the layers, the scented candles, the soft focus piano tracks, the perfectly timed single tear, you realize what's really underneath, an empire built entirely on vibes. And those vibes, they've been monetized, spiritualized, and weaponized. At some point, Oprah's media machine stopped resembling a talk show and started looking more like a luxury hallucination. Equal parts moonwater and market share. Rogan and Kelly weren't just throwing punches. They were tearing down the velvet drapes in the Temple of Oprah, revealing drywall behind the divine. She didn't just build a brand. She built a belief system, where she's both the prophet and the product line. And the hypocrisy? It's artisanal. Here's a woman who preaches authenticity, yet won't be seen unless the lighting has been signed off by a glam squad and blessed by a Reiki healer. She peddles vulnerability like it's an upscale subscription box, all while protected by layers of PR so dense, the Pentagon looks like a group chat. Rogan, half laughing, half stunned, muttered under his breath, "She's got more security around her image than Fort Knox has for gold."
Didn't help by sort of saying it's cheating. What do you mean it's cheating? It's a drug that helps people control their appetite. How is that cheating? So she was probably on the wrong side of things when she was saying that. And now I think she was sort of forced to admit, because as you say, it's obvious. Somebody like Oprah, who's constantly up and down with the weight and hasn't been on the skinnier side for a long time. And then suddenly, after this miracle drug comes out, like, we know. But she's still a spokesperson for Weight Watchers, and I guess she's going to still tell us that the point system is really what's behind the weight.
Megyn Kelly didn't even blink. She's been in the game long enough to recognize elite-level spin when she sees it. And Oprah's spin? It's Olympic. 1 minute, she's barefoot in a dewy meadow whispering about emotional healing. And the next, she's slapping a 5-figure price tag on a retreat that amounts to luxury group therapy with cucumber water and branded mantras. Enlightenment, brought to you by corporate sponsors. Then there's the performance. The trembling voice, the slow, soul-piercing eye contact, the kind of dramatic pause that lasts longer than most people's Wi-Fi connections, and Rogan, ever the straight-shooting meat and potatoes truth junkie, finally cracked. Is this growth, or is this just Oscar-worthy marketing? Because every confession, every glossy special, every breathy soundbite wasn't raw vulnerability, it was construction. Another polished brick in the cathedral of self-worthship, gift-wrapped as public service. Oprah doesn't just have followers, she has full-on disciples. And the wildest part? They thank her for it. Every carefully manufactured emotion is wrapped in velvet and delivered with a gratitude bow. People cry just standing near her, as if proximity to Oprah is some sort of spiritual Bluetooth connection that downloads inner peace and a promo code. But Kelly? She skipped the theatrics and went straight for the jugular. You know what's worse than fake humility? Fake activism. One day, Oprah's sobbing on camera about injustice. The next, she's draped in a $12,000 designer coat on the cover of a magazine, speaking about oppression from the comfort of her private vineyard. Not a flicker of hesitation crossed Megyn's face. Just pure surgical takedown energy. Clean, cold, and undeniable.
Just hit the scene in like the 1980s, and she was fresh out of Chicago. She was in Chicago for the launch of her national talk show. She was something electric and interesting and authentic, you know? I miss fat Oprah. She was just genuine. Now this thin, Ozempic Oprah has lost, along with the pounds, her heart, her sense of authenticity. And what we're getting these days is this cleansed, elite, billionaire version who wants to scrub the record.
And then came the pivot. Oprah's latest chapter. Less book club, more ballot box. Because why just heal souls when you can help shape the Senate? Rogan was stunned. This is the same woman who gave the national spotlight to Dr. Oz, Dr. Phil, and now she's moonlighting as a political kingmaker? That's not a pivot. That's tossing matches into dry brush, then blaming the flames for burning down your house. But her real power move? Selective silence. When her hand-picked experts implode in public, or the wellness advice goes full pseudoscience and leads people off metaphorical cliffs, Oprah doesn't answer. She doesn't explain. She evaporates, vanishing into a luxury yurt somewhere under the banner of deep reflection. No statements, no accountability, just a soft exit wrapped in sage smoke. Rogan and Kelly weren't buying the retreat. They called it what it was, strategic vanishing. Because Oprah doesn't get grilled the way everyone else in media does. She's not held to the same standard. Why? Because she wrapped her empire in pastel affirmations, flawless lighting, and designer-level empathy. And for decades, no one wanted to be the one to whisper the unthinkable. The Empress has no ethical wardrobe. But then Rogan and Kelly showed up. They lit the incense of accountability, pulled back the silk curtain, and watched as the illusion, one curated tier at a time, dissolved into smoke. Now, after layer upon layer of carefully marketed meaning has been peeled away like an overpriced organic onion with a branding deal, we're staring at the raw core. And the truth is, it was never really about awakening your soul.